Watch what you're saying.
Maybe we should go.
When I say I, Rabbi, I'm saying God.
Oh, shit, he said it.
Me too. Me too.
Said it. Oh, my God, I don't believe it.
Well, all right. I'll have to check that out. Looks interesting. Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, Martin Luther, Part 28, in which we will continue reading the writings of Martin Luther, because as the Scottish schoolmaster said, Martin Luther, Secret of the Golden Flower, Secret of the Golden Flower, Martin Luther, something like that. You have to go on the wheel, the chicken wheel, you have to get through Martin Luther to get to the Secret of the Golden Flower. So that helps us to move forward when nothing else will. No. But also, all that stuff I've said previously in previous episodes. There is only one frankincense and myrrh left, and I'm going to use it today. So as you know, I have come to remove the ball gag from the mouths of those who say, and to put the ball gag back in the mouths of those who say, but I'm not into S&M. What accent was that? I think people say BDSM now, Edward. Your Gen X is showing. All right, I think we've set the tone. I think that's enough. The people who should click away have already clicked away, and you're still with us, so you're going to be along for the ride. Welcome. That's nice. Okay, so this is a new section. We've got frankincense and myrrh and coffee in a anchor. A boat. I think it's a boat thing. There's an anchor hanging from it too. It seems like it really must mean something to somebody. All right. If you ever have the opportunity, I highly recommend having a formal Ethiopian coffee ceremony. It's pretty cool. It involves frankincense and coffee. Anyway, all right. And sitting feeling awkward at a table, wishing that you had said no when they asked if you wanted the full ceremony. That's part of the fun of it. No, you don't have to do that. So the good news is, the Schrodinger's news is, it's a new section. It's called On Translating, an open letter written 1530. So Martin Luther's going to talk about translating. Martin Luther translated the Bible, so maybe that's what he's going to talk about. So we don't know if this is going to be good or not. All right, let's hit it. Okay. So this is the editor's note. Penguin, the Penguin Boys, the boys over at Penguin Classics. Summer 1530. Luther goes into hiding once again. It had been nearly a decade since the emperor had declared him a traitor, and the Pope declared him a heretic. So from a certain perspective, this has a lot in common, actually, with the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, both considered heretic by the Pope. All right. This time, he holes up in the Coburg Castle, the farthest south and west fortress of the Saxon prince, parentheses, now John, quote, the steadfast, end quote, Frederick's brother, end quote, end parentheses. Emperor Charles V had convoked another legislative assembly, the Diet of Augsburg. This time to hear firsthand what Lutherans, not just Luther, believe, teach, and confess. Coburg is as close to Augsburg as Luther can safely stay, parentheses 175 miles away, end parentheses. And while couriers deliver regular updates on the proceedings to Luther and return to Augsburg with his responses, he continues to write and publish on related themes. As the proceedings continue, Luther pens this piece on September 12th as an open letter to an acquaintance in Nuremberg. Same Nuremberg, different century. Same places, sometimes they're still there. Anyway, the recipient delivers it to a Nuremberg printer on the 15th, and it appears in public shortly thereafter. Luther seeks to clarify two basic issues. First, the biblical, textual basis for his understanding of justification by faith alone. And second, the practice of praying to the saints. Let me guess, don't do it. This is what he says. I say go ahead and do it. Worship them if you like, or worse. Whatever. Do what thou wilt. Shall be the whole of them. And it harms none, unless you want to. And means if. It's an old-timey thing. Never mind. To the honorable and upright Mr. X, my esteemed gentleman and friend, grace and peace in Christ. I have received your request for my response to your questions. First, you wondered why I translated Paul's words of Romans 3:28. Arbitramur hominem justificari ex fide absque operibus. Like this, quote, we hold that a person is justified without the works of the law, by faith alone, end quote. You mention also that the Papists, that means the Catholics, the Roman Catholics, the people who have a pope, right? Papists. That the Papists are making a tremendous fuss because the word sola, parentheses alone, end parentheses, is not in Paul's text. And that this addition of mine to the words of God is not to be tolerated. It's the words of Paul. It's a little bit of an exaggeration to say it's the words of God. I'd say, I don't think you're supposed to think Paul's words are the words of God. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the big bright light on the... I'll keep reading. Okay, second, you ask whether the departed saints too intercede for us, because we read that angels indeed do intercede for us. Question mark. Intercede for us? Regarding the first question, you may give your Papist acquaintances the following answer from me, if you like. First, if I, Dr. Luther... Wait a minute. Martin Luther is a doctor? Dr. Martin Luther... So the only difference between Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Dr. Martin Luther is the King Jr.? Huh! This is the first time I've heard him refer to himself as Dr. Martin Luther. I am now, henceforth, going to refer to him as Dr. Martin Luther just to confuse the living fuck out of everyone. All right. Thank you, Dr. Martin Luther, for that. First, if I, Dr. Luther, Lex Luthor? No, Martin Luther, thought that all the Papists taken together would be able to translate a single chapter of the Scriptures correctly and well, I would certainly have mustered up enough humility to invite their aid and assistance in putting the New Testament into German. But because I knew, and still see with my own eyes, that none of them knows how to translate or to speak German, I spared them and myself that trouble. It is evident, indeed, that they are using my German translation to learn how to speak and to write German. In short, they are stealing from me my language, of which they had little knowledge before. They do not thank me for it, however, but prefer to use it against me. However, I readily grant them this, for it tickles me that I have taught my ungrateful pupils, even my enemies, how to speak. Second, you may say that I translated the New Testament conscientiously and to the best of my ability. I have compelled no one to read it, but have left that open, doing the work only as a service to those who could not do it better. No one is forbidden to do a better piece of work. Those who do not want to read it can drop it. I neither ask anybody to read it nor praise anybody who does so. It is my testament and my translation, and it shall continue to be mine. If I have made some mistakes in it, though I am not conscious of any and would certainly be most unwilling to give a single letter a wrong translation intentionally, I will not allow the Papists to judge. You were a Papist, Mr. Luther, weren't you? What are you talking about? It's like me being like, you Americans, with this accent. Yeah, like, Martin, you were a monk. You were a Catholic monk for how many decades? Silly goose. The Papists. Sorry, I'm just being silly. What are we doing here? Yeah. Their ears are still too long, and their hee-haws are too weak. That was pretty funny. For them to criticize my translating. I know very well, and they know it even less than a miller's donkey, how much skill, energy, sense, and brains are required in a good translator. For they have never tried it. There is a saying, quote, whoever builds along the road has many bosses, end quote. That is the way it is with me, too. Those who have never spoken properly, parentheses, to say nothing of actually translating, end parentheses, have suddenly become my teachers, and I must be their pupil. If I were to have asked them to translate into German the first two words of Matthew's Gospel, Liber Generationis, not one of them would have even clucked as well as a chicken. I'm kind of enjoying this side of Martin Luther, I have to admit. And now these fine fellows sit in judgment on my whole work. Similarly, St. Jerome endured this kind of thing when he translated the Bible into Latin. Everyone was his teacher. He alone was incompetent. Those who were not worthy to clean his shoes criticized the good man's work. It takes a great deal of patience to do a good thing publicly, for the world always thinks it can do better. It is always putting the bit in the horse's rear, criticizing everything and doing nothing. It is its nature. it cannot help itself. I should like to see a Papist who would come forward and translate even a single epistle of St. Paul or one of the prophets without making use of Luther's German translation. Then we should see a fine, beautiful, praiseworthy German translation. We have seen the Tresdent scribbler who played the master to my New Testament. I shall not mention his name again in my books, as he has his judge now, and is already well known anyway. He admits that my German is sweet and good. He saw that he could not improve it, but, eager to discredit it, he went to work and took my New Testament almost word for word as I had written it. He removed my introductions and explanations, inserted his own, and thus sold my New Testament under his name. Oh my, dear children, how it hurt me when his prince, in a nasty preface, condemned Luther's New Testament and forbade the reading of it, yet commanded simultaneously that scribbler's New Testament be read, even though it was the very same one that Luther had produced. I can see why he's annoyed. I'm not making this up. Simply take the two testaments, Luther's and the scribbler's, and compare them. You will see who is the translator of them both. He has cut and pasted in a few spots, and even though some of that irks me, I can let it go. It really doesn't matter as far as the text itself is concerned. For this reason, I never intended to write against it, but I could not help but chuckle that the same kind of good judgment that would so terribly mock, dismiss, and ban my New Testament when it was published under my name would make it required reading when published under someone else's name. Where is the integrity in slandering and vilifying another's book if you pirate it and publish it under your own name? And then to gain higher praise and status through the work of someone else, parentheses, the very work you've just slandered, and parentheses, well, I leave that for your judge to decide. In the meantime, I am satisfied, even happy, that my work, parentheses, as St. Paul also boasts, bracket parentheses, bracket parentheses, Philippians 1:18, and bracket parentheses, end parentheses. All right, note to self, Philippians is canonized, so when it's quoted in the Nag Hammadi, they're making reference in a heretical text to a canonized text. Okay, canonized, like as in, is it canon? Is this real Star Wars? Is this canon? It's not canon. Oh, they decanonized. They took Discovery out of the canon in 1 2-second flash on the last episode of Lower Decks, if you hadn't heard. Anyway, is being promoted even, but did I say end bracket parentheses, end parentheses? If not, is being promoted even by my foes, and that Luther's book without Luther's name, but under the name of his enemies, must now be read. What better revenge is there? But that is not my main point. If your Papist wants to whine about the word sola, parentheses, alone, end parentheses, tell him this, quote, Dr. Martin Luther will have it so, and he says that Papists and donkeys are the same, end quote. As Juvenal puts it, quote, I will it, I command it, my will is reason enough, end quote. We are not going to be the pupils and disciples of the Papists, but their masters and judges. For once, we too are going to be proud and brag with these blockheads, Devo.
Blockhead! Squared off! Blockhead! 8 corners! Blockhead! 90-degree angles! Flat top! Blockhead! Step straight ahead! Blockhead! Snake eyes! Blockhead! 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 Goo top! Blockhead! Squared off!
for the journey with us. All right. Where were we? Yes. Okay, blockheads, right. And as St. Paul boasts over against his mad raving saints, what? Bracket parentheses 2 Corinthians 11:21 FF, end bracket parentheses. So I shall boast over against these donkeys of mine. I wonder if that, is he saying ass? Is he using a German word that basically would be better translated as ass, but they're translating it as donkeys because it's the literal interpretation? These asses. Some ass says this. Anyway. Hee-haw. Chickens cluck better than their twins. He's so funny. This is kind of fun. I enjoy. This is, okay. Are they doctors? So am I. Are they learned? So am I. Are they preachers? So am I. Are they theologians? So am I. Are they debaters? So am I. Master debaters, I might add. That's editorial commentary. That wasn't in the text.
But the servant waits while the masturbates.
Thank you, Madeline Kahn. Anyway, are they philosophers? So am I. Are they delecticians? So am I. Are they lecturers? So am I. Do they write books? So do I. Me too. I've written 11, kind of. 8 of them I wrote. 2 of them were written by a computer program I wrote that isn't really AI. It's more like 1980s level, like random Mad Lib. And then the 11th one, of course, my dad wrote and I typed up. So I've published 11 books. I've written 8 books. Though one of them is a combination of 3 of the others, with a little bit of extra on top of it. So 7.5 books. Never mind. What? Yes. And the list goes on. I can expound psalms, Psalms, psalms. That's how you pronounce that. Mm-hmm. No, that's not how you pronounce it. I can expound psalms and prophets, psalms, like palm, P-A-L-M, palm, P-O-M. Never mind. S-O-Ms, psalms, S-O-M-S. I think we should all take a vote and just rename psalms, respell. Keep the name the same. I can expound psalms and prophets. They cannot. I can translate. They cannot. I can read the Holy Scriptures. They cannot. I can pray. They cannot. And to come down to their level, I can use their own dialectics and philosophy better than all of them put together. And besides, I know for sure that none of them understands their Aristotle. They cannot understand a single passage from Aristotle any more than I can fly. This is no idle boast. As a child, I was trained and drilled in all their scholarship, in quotes, quote, scholarship, end quote. And I understand how deep and broad it is, just as they know that I can do everything they can. Still, these sickos treat me like I were a newcomer to their field, as if I had just showed up this morning and had never seen or heard what they teach and know. They are so brilliant, parading around with all their academic achievements, teaching me what has already become old hat to me. Let them scream and shout. I'll sing with the working girls. Quote, I have known for 7 years that horseshoe nails are iron. End quote. I don't get that reference. I hesitate to call upon Editor Edward to explain that reference. Editor Edward, would you please explain that reference? It's not really clear, but on account of you know, how famous Martin Luther is as a historical person within Protestant Christianity especially. There's like a lot of people quoting Martin Luther saying that. A few different translations of him making reference to singing with the harlots or singing with the working girls or whatever it is, singing with the ladies of the night. I have known for 7 years that horseshoes are made of iron. Was it horseshoes or horseshoe nails? Doesn't matter. The point is, I don't think anybody knows, but there was one person that said apparently that was an expression in his day that means, you know, that something is obvious. All right, now we know. If you learned something today, please click like and subscribe. Let this be the answer to your first question. And please give these donkeys no other and no further answer to their useless braying about the word sola simply this, quote, Luther will have it so. And he says he is a doctor above all the doctors of the whole papacy, end quote. So he didn't answer the question. Well done not answering the question, Martin. That was slick. Slick as fuck, I might add. It shall stay at that. From now on, I will just hold them in contempt, and have them held in contempt so long as they are the kind of people, I should say asses, that they are. There are shameless nincompoops among them who have never learned their own art of sophistry, like Dr. quote Smithy, end quote, and Dr. quote Snotnose, end quote, and their likes, and who set themselves against me in this matter, which transcends not only sophistry, but, parentheses, as St. Paul says, bracket parentheses, 1 Corinthians 1:19 through 25, and bracket parentheses and parentheses, all the world's wisdom and understanding as well. Right, okay, that famous one. Clearly, donkeys do not need to bray if we can see them. Their ears give them away. To you and to our people, however, I shall show why I chose to use the word sola. Oh, he's gonna explain it. Though in Romans 3:28 it was not sola, but solum, or tantum, that I used. So clearly do these donkeys stare at my work. That said, I admit that I have indeed used sola fide elsewhere, and I want both solum and sola. I have constantly worked as a translator to produce true and clear German. In fact, it happened with some frequency that for weeks on end we hunted and sought for a single word, and sometimes we just couldn't find it. In translating the book of Job, Master Philip, Orogalus, and I worked so hard that there were times we scarcely handled 3 lines in 4 days. Now that it is translated and finished, everyone can read it and criticize it. Now they can glide their eyes over 3 or 4 pages and not stumble once. They don't even know what boulders and clods had once been where they now move along, as over finely polished wood. We had to sweat and toil there before we got those boulders and clods out of the way, so that others could go along so nicely. The plowing goes well when the field is cleared, but rooting out the woods and stumps and getting the field ready, this is a job nobody wants. There is no such thing as earning the world's thanks. Even God himself cannot earn it, not even by the sun and the whole of heaven and earth, or even by his own son's death. Guilt trip much? Sorry. The world simply remains, quote, the world, end quote, because the devil will not let it be anything else. Here in Romans 3:28, of course, I knew that the word solum is not in the Greek or Latin texts. The Papists did not have to teach me that. True enough, the 4 letters SOLA are not there, and these blockheads stare at them like cows at a new gate. At the same time, they do not see that it conveys the sense of the text. It belongs there if the translation is to be clear and vigorous. I wanted to speak German, not Latin or Greek. It was German I had undertaken to speak in the translation. But it is the nature of our German language that in speaking of 2 things, one of which is affirmed and the other denied, we use the word allein, bracket parentheses only, and bracket parentheses, along with the word nicht, bracket parentheses not, and bracket parentheses, or kein, bracket parentheses no, and bracket parentheses. For example, we say, quote, the farmer brings allein grain and kein money, end quote. Quote, no, really, I do not have money, but only allein grain. Oh, yeah, only allein. Quote, end quote. Quote, I have only allein eaten and nicht yet had anything to drink. End quote. Quote, did you allein write it and nicht read it over? End quote. There are innumerable cases of this kind in daily use. In all these phrases, this is German usage, not Latin or Greek. The German language adds the word allein in order that the word nicht or kein may be clearer. I think it's align. Be clearer and more complete. Certainly, I can also say, quote, the farmer brings grain and kein money, end quote. But the words kein, quote, kein money, end quote, do not sound as full and clear as if I were to say, quote, the farmer brings allein grain and kein money, end quote. Here, the word allein helps the word kein so much that it becomes a complete, clear German expression. These donkeys look only at the literal Latin text for clues as to how Germans speak. We, however, ask the mother in the home, the child down the lane, the worker in the marketplace. Their language and the way they speak guide us as we translate. That way, they will understand what the text means and hear that we are speaking German to them. Take the words of Christ in Matthew 12:34 and Luke 6:45, for example. If I follow these donkeys who want me to follow the original word for word, then I would translate ex abundantia cordis os liquitur as, quote, out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks, end quote. Tell me, what kind of German is that? No German could understand what that means. What is, quote, the abundance of the heart, end quote? Germans don't talk like that. That is, unless they are trying to say that some person was too nice or had too much courage, parentheses, and even that would not be right, end parentheses. Quote, abundance of the heart, end quote, is not German, any more than, quote, abundance of the house, end quote, quote, abundance of the stove, end quote, or, quote, abundance of the bench, end quote, is German. Peasant women and peasant men would more likely say, quote, the mouth expresses what wells up from the depth of the heart, end quote. Now that is the kind of good German I strive for, even though I do not always reach that goal or hit that target. The literal meaning of the Latin words stands in the way of good German. I'm going to stop there, and I have to admit, today was fine. I have no complaints about this letter. If anything, I enjoyed it. Yeah, that's good. It's nice. It's refreshing. Sometimes it's like miss. Sometimes, because for those who just tuned in, I guess, we read Meccan Revelation, Carl Jung, Secret of the Golden Flower, and Nag Hammadi and Martin Luther. And sometimes there'll be a week where like they're all kind of like mid to obnoxious, and it's like I start to go like, why do I do this? What is the point of chicken philosophy? But then yesterday on Nag Hammadi, it was pretty good. Carl Jung's thing, was fine. We ended a section. He's like, going into his own head and having adventures, and that's usually entertaining at the very least. And then yesterday, Nag Hammadi was fine, and today, Martin Luther was actually just entertaining. I know that there are things about Martin Luther that I still don't like, and they'll come up again. But today, I just enjoyed his grouchiness and his sort of haughtiness. He talks so much about humility, but this is him being anything but humble, and complaining about the people who criticize him. And if you've seen more than 5 episodes of Chicken Philosophy, you know that I can be just as catty and obnoxious and full of myself and sarcastic when someone criticizes me in a comment that I delete. So yeah, part of the goal of reading Martin Luther is to get in touch with that shadow side, Martin Luther, and here I can see it as if I'm looking in the mirror. That side of Martin Luther is a side of myself for sure. All right, so special thanks to Devo for your concert you gave earlier with Blockhead. I think that was from Duty Now for the Future. Link in the description below. Of course, I recommend all Devo. We're all Devo, meaning de-evolution, which, yeah, from a certain perspective, yeah, I can see that. But it gives me hope to read, things like Martin Luther and Nag Hammadi and be like, no, actually humanity has evolved since those days. Maybe it's devolved in a certain sense I don't know, though. I think with the internet, the thing with the internet is all those, I hate to sound elitist, but idiots, all those idiots, were there before, but now they all have smartphones. And so we get to hear what they're saying, where before we only heard what was being said by professionals on, television, whether it be the news or professional writers getting their points across in movies or in TV shows or in books written that weren't self-published like my books, but that actually an editor and a publisher had to look at and say, yes, we will publish this. Or, a teacher or someone like that. And occasionally you'd hear someone at the bus stop going, yeah, it's all a conspiracy. And then we'd be like, oh, it's one of those guys. Can you imagine if they were in charge? And then someone had the bright idea to give them all smartphones and get them all on social media. And now they're basically in charge, which is de-evolution. Thank you, Devo. All right. Anyway. Anything else? I think that's it for today. Next time, of course, it'll be Gwydion doing Secret of the Golden Flower. We're coming right up on the end of 2024. It's going to be a year divisible not only by 5, but divisible by 25. What? That hasn't happened in 25 years. And the time before that was 3 years before I was born. Whoa. Far out, man. That means I'm going to be 50 in 3 years. Whoa, yeah, that's true, too. I mean, 3 years and 9 months with some change.